All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of source material. We're looking at a strategic video released by the Indian Ministry of Defense detailing something called Operation Sindoor. Now, what we have here is a highly dramatized, really heroic look at a simulated, multi-dimensional military response to cross-border terrorism. And just to be clear up front, our goal today isn't to take any political sides, but to neutrally analyze the strategic messaging, the tactical blueprints, and this major shift in defense doctrine that the video is projecting to the world. We're going to look closely at how the source material highlights incredible operational synergy, the use of integrated intelligence, and a very strict zero-tolerance policy.
So, to make sense of this whole simulation, here's how we're going to break it down. First, the decades of escalating threats. Second, the multi-domain strategy. Third, executing the precision strikes. Fourth, neutralizing the counterattack. And finally, the new strategic doctrine.
Starting us right off with Part 1, Decades of Escalating Threats, the True Catalyst for Action.
The source material lays out this long, decades-old pattern of escalating cross-border attacks orchestrated by groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. It grounds the narrative in real-world incidents, from the devastating 2008 Mumbai attacks to the 2016 base strikes at Pathankot and Uri, and then the 2019 Pulwama convoy bombing. But then the video shifts gears and actually looks into the future. It culminates in a completely fictional April 2025 attack in Pahalgam. And it's this fictional attack that is framed as the ultimate tipping point, the catalyst that basically forces the government into immediate and decisive action.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2, the multi-domain strategy, operating with the whole-of-government approach.
Now, this is where we see that real operational synergy we talked about. The core focus of this blueprint isn't just your standard military lash-out. It's a massive, coordinated machine. You've got traditional branches operating in total lockstep, the Army utilizing land-based missile systems, the Navy deploying submarines to control the sea, and the Air Force locking down the skies. But crucially, they are seamlessly integrated with emerging cyber and space capabilities from agencies like ISRO. It's a completely unified, simultaneous front.
To actually manage all these moving parts, planners in this scenario established a comprehensive escalation matrix. Think of it as a highly calibrated playbook. Commanders were given total operational freedom, but, and this is a big but, their targets were strictly restricted to terror infrastructure. Utilizing highly secure communications and some seriously rapid logistics, the strategy heavily emphasizes being proactive and completely prepared rather than just reacting to a threat.
And all of that preparation leads us directly into Section 3, executing those precision strikes in Operation Sindoor.
So with cyber assets constantly monitoring critical systems and space assets repositioned for real-time surveillance, the actual kinetic phase kicks off at precisely 0105 hours. And get this, the execution lasted exactly 22 minutes. That's it. It is presented as this blindingly fast, overwhelming application of force designed to totally neutralize threats before the adversary can even process what's hitting them.
In that incredibly brief 22-minute window, 9 carefully selected terror infrastructure targets across the border were hit simultaneously. The operation is depicted as flawlessly coordinated, leaving absolutely zero room for error.
The video portrays these strikes as an absolute massive success. We're talking over 100 militants eliminated with 0 civilian casualties. And the narrative really stresses that this was only made possible because of deeply integrated intelligence. The weapon timings were strictly calibrated using precise real-time data straight from that multi-domain surveillance grid to ensure non-combatants were completely protected. It's surgical precision at its finest.
But of course, the simulation doesn't end there. Moving on to Section 4, neutralizing the counterattack and defeating the adversary's Operation Bunny and Unmarsis.
Facing a simulated retaliatory response which included indiscriminate firing and drone infiltrations, India's defense forces basically shut it down in 3 really rapid steps. First, detecting the uncoordinated drones using space assets and an active air defense grid. Second, intercepting those threats using counter-UAS and S-400 systems from over 300 kilometers away. And third, and easily the most decisive move, launching preemptive counterstrikes. To completely kneecap any further retaliation, the Indian Air Force went on the offensive and preemptively targeted this specific matrix of Pakistani air bases. The video states that this preemptive wave destroyed early warning aircraft, UAVs, and fighter jets before they even had the chance to leave the runway, literally hitting them before they could get off the ground.
Let's look at the ultimate goal of these preemptive attacks. By specifically targeting radar and missile sites at those bases, the operational strategy effectively blinded the adversary's surveillance. The film uses a really specific term here: resistance-free corridors. By knocking out the eyes and ears of the enemy's air defense, they created wide-open lanes in enemy airspace. It left the adversary, in the video's own words, completely numb and in a total state of disarray.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, a new strategic doctrine centered on absolute zero tolerance.
With the enemy blinded from the air, dominated on land, and stealth destroyers poised right there at sea, the adversary is essentially forced into a panic, requesting an immediate cessation of hostilities. The explainer video concludes that this rapid victory was achieved through 4 core pillars: transparency over misinformation, flawless tri-service coordination, the massive success of indigenous defense equipment, and an absolute definitive end to tolerating nuclear blackmail.
And that brings us to the ultimate thesis presented in the film. The entire dramatization of Operation Sindoor really serves to communicate one definitive zero-tolerance policy, which is perfectly encapsulated in this one quote: "Terror and talk cannot coexist." The video makes it crystal clear that diplomacy and cross-border terrorism will no longer be treated as parallel tracks. They simply cannot flow together anymore.
So as we wrap up our analysis of this dramatized shift in strategic posturing, it leaves us with a pretty wild thought experiment. If this video represents the genuine blueprint for future conflict, one that relies heavily on blinding speed, multi-domain synergy, and an absolutely literal zero-tolerance approach, how is this going to permanently alter deterrence and the whole geopolitical calculus of South Asia? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning.